Veterans. What's up with him? Giro asked the squaddies that sat with him around the campfire as he gestured to the newest reinforcement, who was seated in the shadows just outside the reach of the light and warmth of the flaming wood. I dunno, Hashra muttered, focusing on heating his food ration pack on the heated stones around the rim of the fire. Maybe he just isn't up for this kind of job. She shrugged as she dipped a claw into the foil bag and tested the temperature by licking the contents of her claw. He literally landed 10 hours ago. What could possibly have spooked him this early? Giro kept his voice down to avoid the newbie hearing him. All we've done is head 20 clicks out of the base, in a straight line mind you, and set up camp. Based on his reactions, we should have been in direct fire exchange for half the day. Giro leant back on his log and whispered, "Watch this." Then he grabbed his field spade and lobbed a large piece of ember towards the newbie, who instantly grabbed his rifle, which had been leaning against his shoulder, and dodged past 2 trees on the perimeter of the camp, only to take a prone shooter's cover behind a third one. Bit jumpy there, newbie? He laughed as the others joined him in his mirth. The newcomer didn't answer. He merely swept the perimeter with his scope and settled in against his newfound tree, this time with his rifle leaning against the other's shoulder. "What's the noise about?" Dreek popped his head out of the only tent in the camp. As the squad sergeant, he'd been adamant that his teammates shared the tent. He was a strong believer in the concept of packing light. The newbie wasn't. He'd packed enough munitions to level a small city and insisted on splitting it up between the hover carrier and himself. Giro estimated the new guy was carrying half his naked body weight in projectiles. "Just hazing the new guy, Sarge." Giro let the joviality shine through. Dreek sighed to himself and threw a quick side eye on the newest addition to the squad before he walked over to the fire, where he squatted down and rested his 3-digit pincers on his knees. "I'd probably not do that," he said quietly. "What?" Hashra had, with this newest addition, passed on the role of newbie and had been looking forward to not being the butt of the joke every time. "Really?" Giro had known his sergeant since the academy. 3 years of crawling through the mud on an alien planet next to him. Experience had taught him that if Dreek thought something was a bad idea, it usually was. "We've been doing this for what? 2 years at the academy and then 3 here, yes?" Most of the squad nodded. "Are we veterans?" Dreek looked at the 4 faces around the campfire. "Most start feeding the local ecosystem after 3 months, Giro stated calmly. "So yeah, we are vets." Dreek looked at the newcomer. He had read the personnel files. The tiny single-digit percentage that wasn't blacked out, redacted, or outright deleted told him that Corporal First Class Hamish McPhee was an advanced scout of the Human Offensive Logistics Initiative Elite Scout Cybernetic Enforcement Tactical Division. It also informed him that McPhee drew his first breath over 300 years before he had taken his own, and that the soldier, currently placed on the outskirts of his camp, carefully observing the tree line, had liberated his people from enslavement when his great-great-grandsire was just a newborn. The one thing it had reminded him of, at the beginning of each paragraph, was that the information was strictly confidential, and that sharing any of the knowledge with anyone not cleared for it would result in immediate termination. "Just don't." He sighed and semi-crawled over to McPhee, making sure to stay under the human sightline. "This seat taken?" he asked, as he nodded towards the empty spot next to McPhee. "Nope," came the answer. No emotion, just a reply. "Good trek today." Dreek wanted to ask a million questions, but only one was of importance. Unfortunately, it was one of those questions that didn't naturally blend into a conversation. "Yup." McPhee didn't waste words. "This is a good campsite. A good find." Dreek offered the sincere compliment, hoping to get any emotion or even emotional analogue from the human. McPhee turned his head and looked at the sergeant. "I didn't find it. I tracked the ones who'd secured the perimeter, killed them, secured the site, cleared the mines and set up a defensive perimeter, and removed their camp," he said, flatly. "I suspected as much." Dreek sighed and leaned against the tree trunk a little harder. He could feel the heat from the rifle barrel radiate towards him. "You guys are legends," he said quietly. "Your tales are whispered with respect around campfires throughout the galaxy." "I wouldn't know," McPhee replied with the same cold air he'd used so far. It's always the same. Wake up, briefing, preparations, insertion, mission, exit, debrief, then back to stasis. They sat in silence for a while. This mission. Dreek broke the silence. He had to know. We're tasked with breaking a secondary supply line. He couldn't finish it. It's not a supply line. McPhee looked at the sergeant, and you don't have neither the man or firepower to break it. Do I want to know? Dreek asked quietly, fearing the answer. No. The human super-veteran elite scout slowly rose to his feet and grabbed his rifle. If you don't kill the fire and go very, very quiet, you'll be dead in an hour. What about you? Dreek knew the human was leaving. I'll be either dead or extracted in 5 hours. Thanks for the lift, though. McPhee smiled, and just before he faded into the darkness that wasn't threatened by the flickering light of the campfire, he gave a final goodbye. It was nice talking for once. Thanks for listening.